This is a song by Ed Sheeran called No Strings. If we make it through this year, then nothing can break us. Trouble leaves and reappears, but we've shown we can take it. We tear our hair out and overthink it, work and get burned out. But this is no strings, you are who I love, and that won't change when we're falling apart. Yeah, this is no strings, you are who I love, it's just growing pains. If we make it through this year, we should celebrate it. Rarefied atmosphere, till now we evaded. We tore the walls down to build them up, never was in doubt. 'Cause this is no strings, you are who I love, and that won't change when we're falling apart. This is no strings, you are who I love, it's just growing pains. We'd not fight for love just to let it be defeated. What we're going through is common, it doesn't mean we don't feel it. Easy to just give it up, guess we've got enough reasons every time we have come undone. I'll say it's no strings, you are who I love, and that won't change when we're falling apart. This is no strings, you are who I love, it's just growing pains.
Thank you so much, Pat. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Parrish, and I will be the platform assistant for today. We are having a wonderful service. Our speaker for today is Reverend Kelly Isola, and her topic is When I'm Hard to Love, Love Me Harder. And of course, naturally, our guest musician is Pat Wictor. Now for my centering prayer. My centering prayer is a prayer for the second week of Advent. God of power and mercy, open our hearts and welcome. Remove the things that hinder us from receiving Christ with joy so that we may share his wisdom and become one with him when he comes in glory. For he lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Love is my decision. It's up to me to give of my heart. Love is my decision. No one else can tell me to start. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. Love is my decision. It's up to me to stand on that bridge. Love is my decision. No one else can make me forgive. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. Love is my decision. It's up to me to dance down the road. Love is my decision. No one else can lighten my load. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. Love is my decision. It's up to me to dance down the road. Love is my decision. No one else can lighten my load. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. My decision right here and now.
Hey, thank you, Pat. It's one of my favorite songs. Love is my decision. And yet, how often do we actually ask the question of ourselves? Am I deciding love? How often do we intentionally go, love is my decision, and I'm not choosing it today? I don't think any of us really ask the question that way or answer it that way. And yet it's a question that sort of drives underneath what I'm talking about today. If you saw the title, when I'm hard to love, love me harder, it comes from, I don't know about you, but I know there's times in my life, throughout my whole life, and in certain days and moments, I guarantee you I am hard to love. It just is. Sometimes I'm that annoying. Sometimes I'm that frustrating. Sometimes I'm that, blah, 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 can't hear you. And I'm going to guess that everyone here probably has, a similar experience. If they're willing to, a little self-awareness, self-inquiry can say, yeah, that's me. And, or you have anybody in your life that's hard to love, whether long periods of time, short periods of time. And if you don't have somebody that's that annoying, I can lend you one, because I have one or two. And it's not meant to denigrate the other person or me or feel guilty or any shame. It's a reality of our life. We bump into each other, right? We get prickly. I use the word prickly because we do, right? We just kind of like, the word I use, it's not necessarily technical, emotion is arg. It's the pirate sound, right? Arg. I feel that way, and or I'm like, oh, that person, like maybe my mother or a friend or a student in class, they're in an arg kind of mood. And it's our job to, believe it or not, to kind of see that and know that. And so the love is my decision piece is really the question that I ask, that I not necessarily intentionally, but, invite us into, because I can see by my decision making that whether I'm, going to love someone who's hard to love, or allow, whether I'm going to love someone who's hard to love and allow myself to be loved when I'm hard to love. Many of us, I think, kind of just, I'm prickly, don't come near me. Or we, secede from the union because that's what's best. That's how I take care of myself. I disappear and go away. Oftentimes, I don't think about love. I know it's one of the 12 powers. And I really think that in all my years in Unity and all my years of teaching and speaking and serving ministries and boards and blah, 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 that I love is one of those, the faculty, right, that I think is probably one of the most misunderstood. And the reason I say that is that I've come to believe that for the most part, when, if you're reading the 12 Powers book, first of all, if you're able to read Charles Fillmore's 12 Powers book, good on you, because it is not for the faint of heart, right? It's one of those books that you read a chapter or read a paragraph and you read it 4 times and you go, okay, I just read this 4 times, but I don't know what I read. And the reason is he didn't write the book. Think of the 12 Powers book as a bunch of sticky notes that someone put together. So it's pieces, parts from talks and notes and things that others put together, not Charles Fillmore, which is what makes it challenging to read. So I happen to think that love, that chapter, but also the faculty and the divine idea of love is largely misunderstood. And I know I'm out of sequence with Advent, but I'm just priming you for next week. That's all. Think of it that way. And for me, also, peace is a manifestation of love. So love is, and I'll say a little bit more about that. But love is not this, pink frosting, squishy, sentimental feeling. It's a principle. It's actually a thing, and it doesn't really have. We attach emotion to it, but in and of itself, it is a principle. It is a faculty. It is. Fillmore calls it a cementing element, but it often. We forget that foundation. We forget that faculty. We forget that, that it's a real thing when we bump up against conflict or resistance or, or again, people that are arg, right? And we can get stuck in our differences. And Lord knows we are in an apocalypse of differences right now. And this is one of the reasons that I want to talk about it, because there's a lot of people around me that I don't even know that I find hard to love, that I don't know that I'll ever get there. And because I know what love is and how it comes into manifest form, I'm just sort of working my way there. But when we get stuck in our differences, it is a power, it is a practice, it is a principle that Charles Fillmore says that this work that in due season will encircle the earth. So I really like that, in due season, meaning I'll just keep chipping away at it. Like it's not a wake up one morning and ta-da, okay, it's all good, all love, but in due season, it will encircle the earth, which means I have work to do. It means you have work to do. And I know work is very often a 4-letter word, and so I can find a different word. It's really a practice. But I believe that we need to, in order to kind of, from the perspective I'm coming at about love, is learning to discern between deeply held beliefs and rigidly held beliefs. And to practice the principle of love, I believe, requires us to kind of know the difference and be able to, extract ourselves from rigidly held beliefs, which tend to be louder tend to separate us, and and can be angrier or have that prickliness to them. And rigidly held beliefs are, sometimes we joke about them as like sacred cows, or no, this is what Fillmore said, Charles or Myrtle, the co-founders of Unity. This is what they said, and that's it. And other things. And if my job is actually to pull at the threads of rigidly held beliefs. It's how we evolve. It's how we actually bring love into manifest form. Because in doing that, in pulling some of the strings from rigidly held beliefs, tempered by love, which I'm going to explain in a moment, is how we can discern between rigidly held and deeply held beliefs. So just hold that, rigidly held and deeply held beliefs, the idea of that as I keep talking. So, and another, an idea that comes into mind when talking about love, especially when, wanting to love someone, the idea of, well, we're all one, right? This idea of oneness. And, we need to realize that oneness is in consciousness, right? It's a spiritual term that, again, I don't know that, exists in the absolute realm. This interconnectedness of matter and thought. It's not about, oneness is not like putting all of our cultures and values and traditions and, into a Vitamix and, becomes one smoothie kind of thing. That's not what oneness is. Again, it's one of those, I think, it's one of those, something we value that can be difficult to talk about. In fact, if you, just for fun, I often Google things just to see what I get. And if you Google oneness, I got more than 20 million hits, when you put something in Google and it gives you a list of websites and then it tells you at the bottom, like how many total, and it was more than 20 million, which I think on one hand is great. There's 20 million hits about oneness. However, not all are about the same thing. The first one on the list was about Nike's Oneness Sneaker Boutique. So Google doesn't necessarily give me always what I need. But I wanted to bring the oneness in because it's, it is oneness. Like, what does that really look like? Just like love. Like, what does that really look like? And when you say, when I'm hard to love, love me harder, what does that really mean? What does that look like? Not as a theory, but really lived, right? Down and dirty in the reality of my everyday life. Oneness is a creative life force that comes alive through the power of love. And it's empowered when I see it, which means I need to be looking for it, which then brings me to living it down and dirty. That's where I need to pay attention, living it here and now, not just some spiritual idea that sounds good, that might make me feel a little more comfortable in the moment, but what does it look like really in my everyday life? That's what I believe is the power of unity teachings, of unity principles, is not to be able to, sound like I swallowed a revealing word or something that Myrtle or Charles wrote, but these principles, right? I use principle, capital P, which is another word for God. So I use God. God doesn't use me. I use God. I use principle. So love, when I'm hard to love, love me harder, is about living that love right. And I say down and dirty because it's in the mud and the muck, right? Going, one of my favorite phrases is going inward and downward to God. And that means kind of coming, being in my full humanity. We're fully human, fully divine. Our humanity is gorgeous and glorious, not always perfect, but our humanity, love is made manifest, is our divinity and is made manifest through our humanity. And one of my favorite quotes about love is from Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity. And he says, "Love is the cementing element of all things. You could not have an organism without the help of the cementing power of love. Love is the magnet. You must have love. You cannot live without it. You cannot live without it." So love is the cementing element. I think about cement for a moment. If you've ever seen, cement, when it starts to dry, like that's it. That's the foundation. It's getting, cement is used for a foundation for, you know, buildings and swimming pools and lots of foundations. And you could not have an organism without the help of this cementing element. And it's a magnet. So it's almost like it has two roles that love plays. And you have to have love. You cannot live without it. So if I take that and put that in, like, it sounds good, right? You can't live without it. You must have love. And so what exactly so I'm that person, like, what does that mean practically? I'm the, what does that mean in my life? Like, it sounds good, but if you can't tell me practical application, it doesn't take me long to drift away. So I'm being the good little nerd that I am. I'm a Bible nerd, academic nerd, science and technology nerd. So what I realized as I was reading it is that it sounds, and just hang with me for just a minute, because I'm going to use a little bit of science here, but it sounded to me like what's called a boson, B-O-S-O-N. And some of you may be familiar with the term Higgs boson, like the God particle, but a boson is just a fundamental particle of life. And there are these fundamental particles of life that carry energy and carry forces throughout the universe. They're force carriers, which I really like that. Like, I think I'd like to be a force carrier. A force carrier meaning I'm a love carrier, right? I'm a peace carrier. I'm a enthusiasm carrier. I'm a compassion carrier, right? So bosons are these force carriers. Again, itty bitty, tiny little particles of life. And as force carriers, they either give rise to the forces between other particles, or think about giving rise to the force between us, right? The magnet. I equate that to the magnet that Charles Fillmore was talking about. Or the particle, as a force carrier, gives rise to mass, right? It gives rise to the physical, the manifestation of that force, the cementing element. So I'd like to be a force carrier. So I see love like a boson, right? It gives rise to that, what interacts with what and who and what I'm related to. And it also, love gives rise to this demonstration, to this, how do I be that? And it's, and the other thing about a boson, just as an, oh, by the way, you can't have too many of them. There's no such thing as too many bosons. Just like there's no such thing as too much love. Can't have too much. And wouldn't it, imagine, like, bosons, they bump into each other in the quantum field? How fun would that be to think about us bumping our love, bumping into each other? I don't know. The idea and the image of that makes me, it makes me giggle. It makes me come to life. It makes me want to celebrate each other. But love is a skill, right? It's something we have to learn, and you can make progress with it. I think there's assumption in spiritual communities that we know, well, we just know what love is and we just do it. I don't think that's true. I just don't. It's not I'm not shaming anyone. I just think it's an unconscious, unexamined assumption. And I would give you permission to say, you know what? I'm not sure I know what that means. And then dig a little and learn a little. And, it's not just the enthusiasm, or the life kind of thing, but it's a skill. It requires patience, generosity, imagination, and a million other things. Think about it. When I'm hard to love, love me harder, or flip that, when you're hard to love, I need to love you harder. If I'm going to love you harder when you're busy annoying me, it is going to require patience. It is going to require generosity, imagination. It is going to require Kelly going, wait a minute, what am I'm making this about me when you're the one who's crying out for love. An example, when a little kid says, I think many of us, and correct me if I'm wrong, have heard from a little child, whether it's your own or a grandchild, or, you see a reenactment in a grocery store where a little kid goes, I hate you. You're not the boss of me, or some variation of that, right? You can't make me. You're not my mother, or something like that. But it's this full on, I hate you, or I don't like you, you're not my friend anymore, something. I think most of us are familiar. You've either seen it, maybe you remember a time when you said it, or you've had it delivered to you. I don't think that I'm out of line with that assumption. I say all that because when it happens, we kind of naturally go, okay, we know that's not really true. Like, let's just take the I hate you part. We know that's not true. When you look at a little one, a toddler, we jump into they're probably tired, they're hungry, something's gone wrong. Um, there's just clearly something's amiss in their within themselves or in their surroundings, just something's amiss in their day. And we're looking for some kind of benevolent interpretation that can take off the dispiriting aspects of hearing a child say, I hate you, right? We go looking for, that's probably not true. I wonder what's up for that little one. And we do it naturally with children. Yet we do it very seldomly with adults, right? Almost never do we do that with adults. Instead, we have a tendency to kind of drift into they should know better, or um, ugh, I can't do this again with this person. Like, instead of moving into, okay, what's amiss in someone's life. Um, so when an adult meets an adult and they say, I'm not having a good day, leave me alone, or something like that, that pushes us away. Um, we rather than actually going into that, a way to love someone harder is, within ourselves, go, okay, I'm going to go beyond the facade, just like we do with a child. I'm going to go beyond the facade that's all prickly, that's saying go away, that's saying, there, whatever it is that's coming out of anger, frustration, desolation, silence, it's to love me harder. Clearly, they're crying out for love. And for me to love someone harder, I need to go beyond the facade. So remember those two things about the boson, the magnet, right? There's already this force between us. It already exists. So the boson carries that force. I carry the force and bring it to life by the cementing element, and I bring it to life by standing there, right? Not leaving, whether I'm on the phone, in person, on Zoom, text, whatever, is being willing to say, okay, I'm going to go beyond what I see and just stay there. The course of, I believe, of love is rocky, it's bumpy, it's messy, it can be bloody. This is part of, for me, what I believe where we've kind of gotten tripped up about love is thinking that, if love is present, that everything is smooth and just, there's really no bumps, maybe a little speed bump, and it's just not so. Um, it's a process where people are trying to teach each other how to become the best versions of themselves. That's what I mean. It's a skill. It's how do I teach or support someone in becoming the best version of themselves? That's a demonstration, right? That's a cementing element. Um, this course of love is bumpy. It's, at the best of times. And the more generous we can be towards, flawed humanity, which we all are, the better chance we have of doing the true hard work of love, of being the cementing element, of taking that magnet force, of being a force carrier and cementing it so that, I'm able to go beyond that front, that facade of the challenging behavior and words and ask where it came from. I don't have to necessarily ask out loud. I can ask within myself. So when I'm hard to love, love me harder. And when someone is showing me that they're hard to love, and I want to kind of collapse and go, fine, I can't do this. You make it difficult, Because I've done that, and I'm going to guess others have done it a time or two. And again, not meant to feel guilty about ourselves, but a little self-inquiry and remembering it's a process. I'm a force carrier. So how do I carry this? And when someone is, hard to love, someone in front of me with challenging behavior, challenging words, here's two things that to remember that help me move from just being a force carrier to being the cementing element, to bringing it into manifest form. So there's two things a person is saying, someone that's hard to love. One, they're saying, I can't love you right now. And they can't. When I'm hard to love, when I'm, not being my shiniest self, when I'm being sarcastic and rude and just, petty or, pick a word. I live there once in a while. I'm telling the other person or group of people, I can't love you right now, which is true. I can't. There's no shame in that. It's being aware of who and what I am and what I'm doing. The second thing I'm saying, which is even more important, is somebody please love me. I can't love you right now. And yet, somebody please love me. When I'm being challenging, that's what I'm saying. Somebody please love me, meaning love me harder. And when we can do that, we know a little bit more about what love really is, I think. One of my favorite heroes of love is the late Representative John Lewis. He was love. He was, a congressman, and he was the conscience of Congress, is what he was called. And he says this about love. It's one of many, many things that I love. A lot of things he said. He says, anchor the eternity of love in your own soul. See, anchor, cement. Lean toward the whispers of your own heart. Release the need to hate, to harbor division, and the enticement of revenge. But when it is your time, don't be afraid to stand up, and speak out against injustice. And it's that last sentence that I think points to when I'm hard to love, love me harder. When someone is hard to love, we can get afraid to stand up, to speak out. We may have our own, fear around people that are angry, or, well, I don't want them to, come and, carry on and do, I don't want to get in the middle of it. And yet that's what we're being called to, right? Remember these forces? I'm a force carrier. So I'm being called to be in the middle of it, to stand up, to speak up, right? And to speak out. When I'm hard to love, love me harder. When you're hard to love, do I love you harder? Do I stand up, and speak out? I need to take up some more space. I need to not sort of hunch and contract because you're making me nervous with your behavior and your words, right? Remember that I carry this force, that you are a force carrier, that we can have friction, but also friction creates energy, creates heat, has the potential for me to then bring forward that cementing piece and love you even harder. And loving harder could be just being quiet, right? Loving someone harder is just don't go away when I push you away. That's one of the big things when I think as adults, when someone pushes me away, I'm like, okay, I can't, if you need something, let me know, which isn't even real. Like someone that's that challenged, they're not going to necessarily reach out. They might, I might. I just think it's more healing. It's more loving to not disappear, to not go, yeah, give me a call if you need something, but rather call them and say, hey, I'm going to bring you some dinner. Hey, I'm going to stop by. Hey, I was just thinking about you. Like not pepper with questions, just show up as a cementing element of your relationship. We take up space physically, but we can shrink in other ways to try to fit into whatever it is that we're not comfortable with. We can please, we apologize, and yet It's time that we realize the real estate that we actually own as this glorious human being, our humanity that makes our divinity known. We're connected to each other biologically, we're connected to Earth chemically, and we're connected to the universe atomically, right? We're bosons. So we don't need to minimize the space we take up. So choose your space, take up your space. When I'm hard to love, love me harder. Say that to yourself. When I'm hard to love me harder. Tell your friends, tell your loved ones, say, here, I'm giving you permission. When I'm hard to love me harder. And commit to when you're hard to love, I will love you harder. I will remember that I am that boson, right? I'm that particle that carries the energy and force everywhere I go. I am a force carrier. And that force between particles, that magnet, right? And I can give rise to the actual demonstration of love, the cementing element. Does that make sense? When I'm hard to love, love me harder. There's no timestamp on woundedness, on trauma, on suffering. There's no formula that gets us from the suffering to healing. We be patient, we take up space, we understand it's a skill we develop, and we let the journey be the healing salve. We let the journey be the force that we're carrying. So let's take that into meditation. If you're comfortable, you can close your outer eyes. You can leave them open if you want. Lower them for a soft gaze. Take a breath. Just follow your breath. You don't have to slow it down. You don't have to change it. Just pay attention to the breath as it enters the body and it leaves the body. And know with your inhale, imagine it as it's going to a place a place for rest, a place for care, a holy place. A place where with each breath in, you can feel a little bit more of a childlike energy. The place is not far away. It's right where you are. It's right where you are when we close the doors for just a few moments to the outside world. And we bring our attention again to the breath, to what we see or hear, taste or touch. We pause and we breathe deeply, remembering that feeling that breath, the presence of life, of love, of power, of generosity, a reminder that you were made whole and you can be nothing less than whole. Let my words be yours. I am dear to me. I hold myself in my heart. All are dear to me. I hold you in my heart. I am dear to me. I hold myself in my heart. All are dear to me. I hold you in my heart. Declare that for yourself. And notice with the breath if you feel the words flowing through you. Maybe they energize you a little bit. Remembering that you are a force carrier, that the power of love, that is that magnet, that force between us, that love, that is that cementing element, what I bring through my words and through my actions to demonstrate that force. We are each the cementing element. Now have these words be yours. You are dear to me. I hold you in my heart. You are dear to me. I hold you in my heart. Bring someone to mind that is hard to love, whether a little bit or a lot. Hold their face in your mind and say, you are dear to me. I hold you in my heart. Love transforms, love transfigures, love fills the heart with peace, fills the lips with words of praise and cheer, and fills our life to overflowing to create that cementing foundation. The power to bless others is yours. As a force carrier, you have the capacity. It is your divine nature to love someone harder. You are dear to me. I hold you in my heart. When you are hard to love, I will love you harder. And we say to the world, when I am hard to love, love me harder. Be the force carrier of love that I am not able to be in that moment. And please love me harder. And so it is. Amen.
You say your heart's been turned to stone. You say you wanna be left alone. You say love only made you weep and moan. Well, let me tell you something that you know in your bones. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the power that won't be stopped. Love is the water that wears down the rock. You say your soul's like a dry riverbed. Stop waiting for the water long ago. You said you better pray all night for the rain instead. Love comes like a tidal wave over your head. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the power that won't be stopped. Love is the water that wears down the rock. You say waiting for love takes too long, dulls the sharp mind, weakens the strong. Well, you may be right, but you may be wrong, 'cause love can make a mountain come tumbling down. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the power that won't be stopped. Love is the water that wears down the rock. The river washes over every woman and man, feet in the gravel and mud in your hands. Nothing can stand against love's command. Every boulder turns into a grain of sand. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the power that won't be stopped. Love is the water that wears down the rock. I said love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the power that won't be stopped.